And I'm live. Welcome to another episode of Mondays with Miko. I at an earlier time, right? So I'm here at 5:30 now instead of 7:30. So please mark your calendars that we have a new time for Mondays with Miko. And same amazing guests. Today, I have a scientist who's backstage ready to talk to you, ready to answer your questions about COVID-19. So, and it's the COVID-19. We're going to talk about the vaccine. We may even get a chance to talk about a little bit of history around vaccinations and vaccines and things like that. But I want your questions to be answered. So any questions that you could think of, maybe start to think them through in your head. Feel free to comment any questions that you have in advance, and I will do my best to get to those questions. If you guys can please help me, whether you are watching live with us or on replay, please like and share. Okay, so please like and share. Really, really appreciate it. And remember, folks, if you're watching it on replay, we do go through, me and my guests, we go through and we answer the questions that we can. But if you're not live, we can't answer your questions live. Just an FYI, okay? So, but our goal is to answer as many questions as we possibly can. But again, please, like and share. And today's show, I'm actually broadcasting it on YouTube, Facebook, the Friends of Miko page, and also for the first time, I'm broadcasting the show on the Pick 42 Foundation page. So the show is going to be 100% about the scientists today. Okay, so we're going to keep the topic strictly to any questions you have around COVID and also, with our scientists. Okay, so please share. If anybody is on, if you can share to the Rose Colored Mullen page, I would appreciate it. And if you're with us, let us know. Have you been vaccinated yet? Or are you planning on getting vaccinated? Or you want more information? Or you don't feel like you know where to go to get the vaccine? Okay, so let us know. Let's kind of know where you stand. Put that in the comments. And with that being said, without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on my new friend. Let me see, Dr. Jeremy Rossman. Hello.
Hello. Great to be here.
Yes, we are so excited to have you. So excited to have you on with us today. And it's so funny, your screen, it looks kind of fuzzy all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, the sun came out and there's all this glare. But when we were talking just a minute ago, it was all cloudy and it was no problem.
That is so funny. That's the sun shining in on our conversation. That is perfect. That is perfect. All right, guys. So I wish I had your bio in front of me so I can read it. But hey, guys, if you're on, let me introduce you to Dr. Jeremy Rossman. He is a virologist. And I hope I said that word right, but I found out from him that virology is the study of viruses. So Dr. Rossman, can you tell us, where do you, I think you're a professor. So how long have you been in this business? And what exactly does a virologist do?
So I've been doing this for the past 20 years. And basically what I do is I look at how viruses work, how they infect you, how they cause disease, how your body responds to the viruses and can actually cure them, and what we can do about it. So, a lot of that is working in a lab and trying to look at all the little details of the virus and how it works. But a lot of that is also sort of working with people in communities and saying, okay, well, there's an outbreak of some virus. And so what can we do? How can we help? How can we help communities respond to the disease outbreak to stop the outbreak and to improve health? So it's a little bit of everything.
Okay, so you said some things, I don't want to jump into conspiracy theories and all of that. But when you're looking at a virus in a lab, is that dangerous? Because there's rumors out there, and some of them may be true, right? In terms of, we haven't talked about how COVID-19 came here, right? But one of the rumors is escaped from a lab. What does that mean? Like, and you're saying that you work in a lab and you're looking at viruses. Is it dangerous?
It is. It is dangerous. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of viruses that we work with in the lab can be dangerous. I mean, people work with COVID in the lab, and you absolutely don't want to get COVID infection. So they are dangerous, but we set up the labs in a way so that the people working in the labs are really safe. So we have really good protective equipment. We tend to work with the viruses in basically little boxes that have really specific airflow so that we don't breathe in any of the virus. And all of the work with the viruses is in, really confined areas where there's good access control and a lot of safety protocols, so that we really try and keep the people working with the virus safe, but also make sure that the virus doesn't get out.
Okay, so and another crazy question I have. So when we see, all the ads for coronavirus, it always shows like this circle things with these little antennas like Martians all around it. Is that what it looks like when you're looking through a microscope?
It is. It really is. So what it looks like, if you've ever seen like a picture of what the sun and the corona looks like, all the sort of little, spikes on the surface of the sun, that sort of hazy, you can't see my finger here. It's all like those little hazy spikes coming off the sun. That's why they call it a coronavirus, because when you look at the virus, it actually looks a little bit like the sun, and all those sort of spikes on the surface is that sort of hazy sort of corona around it. So yeah, it's because that's how it looks.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really interesting. So, guys out there on Facebook, I have Dr. Jeremy Rossman on the line with us, on live with us today. He is a virologist, and he is here to answer our questions. He's also with End Coronavirus Now, and we're going to find out a little bit more about End Coronavirus Now in a minute. He's here to answer our questions in terms of the vaccine. So, the sun looks like what the sun looks like. Okay, so I commented on your son. So let's just get into it. When we talk about, there's a lot of hesitancy in my community specifically about the vaccine, right? And so there's all of these variants that are out there, and it could be confusing to anybody, right? So what is your take on the multiple variances, and whether folks should, from a scientific perspective, does it matter, right? Or should we be looking for a specific manufacturer from the scientific perspective?
That is a great question and incredibly important question. So, first of all, talking about variants, what even is a variant? We hear about that all the time, but what is a variant? And so
Right.
basically, every time the virus infects somebody, it replicates and it grows and it makes new copies of itself. And it doesn't do that very well. It makes mistakes every time it copies itself.
Okay.
And so each new copy that comes out of somebody that was infected is a little bit different from the other. Each of those different versions is a variant. So every time you get an infection, you get a lot of different variants. But what that means is that we have so many different variants in the world right now, but most of them work exactly the same way as the normal virus does. They don't really do anything. So what they're calling it is variants of concern, which is
Okay.
kind of a little funny way to say it, but it's just, you get so many of these variants, but most of them don't do anything differently. So there are just a few that do something like they spread from person to person better, or they can, evade the vaccine. And that's what we're concerned about. And so we do have some of these, and they are a concern. But when we talk about the vaccine, then we're hearing things like the South African variant and the Brazilian variant. And these are the ones that the vaccines don't work so well against. So I understand people are worried. They're saying, why should I go get a vaccine if there's already versions of the virus out there that the vaccine doesn't work against? And there's sort of two parts to that. One is that, first of all, the vaccines still work a little bit against them. So it's not like you're completely out of luck anymore. The vaccines do still work to some extent. So they're better than...
question for you, Dr. Rossman, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that all of the US approved vaccines, they'll keep you from the graveyard.
That's the most critical point, because we talk a lot about how the vaccines work and talk about, is one better than the other, or what's the number, that efficacy number that everybody says. And they vary from vaccine to vaccine, but you have all of the ones in the US right now protect you from going to the hospital and protect you from dying from COVID. And that is the critical part. Absolutely.
So on that note, this new one that they're so worried about in Europe, the AstraZeneca, what's your take on, I want to call it the AstraZeneca controversy, and whether, and there's conversations now as to whether we should take that virus, approve it in America.
So yeah, we've been hearing a lot about this AstraZeneca controversy because people were worried in Europe that, taking the vaccine had some side effects, and that it was actually negatively impacting people's health. And this is why we study the vaccines, to make sure that they're safe, so that, I can come here and talk to you and say, yeah, this is a good idea, or no, this is a bad idea. And so what they found was that with a bunch of people that had gotten the AstraZeneca vaccine, about 30 people over millions of people, though, so very small numbers, they had a clotting disorder, and they couldn't tell right now if that was something that just happened to happen to those people, or something that happened because of the virus. Happened because of the vaccine. Because when we did all the clinical trials, when we did the really careful evaluation of the vaccines, we didn't see any evidence of the vaccine causing these clotting disorders. So, there's that little bit of controversy of, is it causing this in a small number of people, or is it not? And the analysis of the European regulatory agencies right now was that it's not definitively causing this. They're still looking into it, but it doesn't look like it's causing it. And in the clinical trials, we see no evidence of that. So, we're still evaluating it. And is there a risk? Vaccines aren't perfectly safe. That's the important thing. Vaccines aren't perfectly safe, but you're comparing it to the risks of getting COVID. And the risks of getting COVID are so much more severe.
Yes. And thank you so much. So guys, just to bring you all up to speed, we are talking to Dr. Jeremy Rossman. Dr. Jeremy Rossman is a virologist, and he is here. He studies viruses for a living, y'all. That's what he does. So he's here today representing Coronavirusorg, and he's answering our questions. And we just had a really good conversation about variants. And actually, Michelle asked a question that was on my list to ask you. Michelle, seriously, I'm going to ask him this question next, because I want to make sure that, we get an opportunity to ask the scientists the things that are on our mind, right, about this vaccine, the things that kind of give us pause. And one of the big things that I've been hearing, and, and I've been defending, but it makes you raise your eyebrows, is, how did we come up with a vaccine so fast? And to Michelle's point, she says that most vaccines take up to 10 years. So this is March 22nd. South Carolina shut down March 15th last year. So it's just been a little bit over a year. And it seems like we went from 0 to 100, and 100 being shots in arms. How did that happen, Dr. Rossman?
I know everybody's wondering this because it's a huge difference to say, how do we go from 10 years down to 1 year and expect that that's going to be safe and that we didn't cut corners? And the answer is we actually didn't cut corners. It's because there are a couple factors. The first is that we didn't just start with all this new technology when the pandemic hit. We had been working on new ways of making vaccines for about 20 years now. So all this, mRNA and the Moderna and the Pfizer technology that is so new, they've been working on it for 20 years. They just made it for this COVID vaccine very quickly, but it's a new technology that works so much faster. So we've been working on it for a very long time. We also had almost a tremendous portion of the world's scientists all of a sudden stopped working on everything else that they were doing and said, we're just going to work on COVID right now. So you have all these manufacturers, all these biotechnology companies, all these scientists devoting all their time and effort onto COVID. So that's something that's never happened before. And then so we're able to utilize things a lot differently, and that makes it go faster without cutting corners.
Right. So just from because we all have careers, we do all different kind of things. You just happen to be a virologist. So last year, let's say January 2020, when your colleagues was going out to dinner, they may have been working on all different kind of things.
Exactly. So
this year, now you guys are on Zoom. And of all of your friends and colleagues, how many are actually working on coronavirus?
Almost everybody that I know is at least part-time working on something about coronavirus. We had people before that were working on flu, working on HIV, working on Ebola, and now everybody has some coronavirus project.
Okay. So here we go. We said that we're going to be answering some hard questions, right? I warned you about that. And we start off by talking about, because you mentioned that you work in a lab, and when you work in a lab, you're looking at viruses. And for those of you who weren't on earlier, I'm gonna just answer the question. He said it's dangerous. He says it's a very dangerous job that he has working with these viruses. So somebody is asking a question. And what they want to know is COVID a man-made virus? Are you prepared to answer that? If you're not,
yeah.
Okay.
That's a great question. I mean, we want to know, where did it come from? How did it exist? And so, what we do, so the short answer is no, we don't think that it's man-made. We think that this virus evolved naturally in wild animals. Now, it might have been studied in a lab, and we can't rule in or out very easily if it was studied from a lab and maybe there was an accident and leaked out, or if it came from wild animals. Now, that's a whole nother question, but what we can say is that it most likely wasn't man-made, because we can look at the genome of the virus. We can look at the genetic code of the virus and look at that and say, how does that compare when we look at all these different variants around the world? And from that, we can say, does it look like the virus has any indicators that it was man-made versus it was actually just all these little changes that happen every time the virus grows in a new host? And it does look like it was natural, but that's all we can say. We're sort of, there's a lot that we're not able to know right now.
Right. So question for you. So on that note, just to help us to kind of level set, right? Because coronavirus or COVID-19, to me, those are still technical terms, technical words, and it's something that's new in our vernacular. Can you tell us about other viruses that scientists like yourself may have studied so that we can kind of correlate this to something else?
Absolutely. So, you had just asked, how many of my colleagues were working on other things beforehand, and I was working on other things before we had COVID. So I was working on the flu. I was studying Ebola virus. I have colleagues that were working on HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
Other people were working on malaria. So a lot of different ones. But again, so many of them are now working on COVID.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you so much for your service, because we need it. So this ain't the first virus, right? And I think you told me earlier that it may not be the last.
Mm-hmm.
So can you help us? I finished it. I started to read a book on the 1918 pandemic, and how does that pandemic way back when in 1918, does it relate anyway to what we're going through now? Have there been, from the scientific perspective, maybe anything that we learned from looking at 1918, from either as a people or from scientists to move forward?
Absolutely. So it's the 1918 pandemic. It's what they call the Great Pandemic, because it was just so incredibly severe. And this was the flu. This was caused by the flu. And it was so severe, but it was so different from what we know now, because now we're looking at this pandemic and we're saying, okay, so why haven't we learned more? Why haven't we figured out things and gotten more answers yet? But when you look back at 1918 and compare to that, they didn't even know what caused the pandemic at that time. They didn't know what the flu virus was. So they didn't have any way to treat it. They didn't know what was causing it. And they knew
so people were just dying, because they was dying quick in really disgusting and gross ways. And it just kind of...
Yeah, it really was. And if you don't know what's going on, I mean, that's incredibly scary. It's scary enough right now during this pandemic. But if you don't even know what's going on, that's got to be terrifying.
Right. So, and I say it again to everybody who's out there listening today, I consider folks like Dr. Jeremy Rossman, they are our new rock stars. Dr. Fauci, they're our rock stars, because really they drop everything at a moment's notice to kind of get us over to find a solution to this problem. Whereas 1918 was 104 years ago. Those options were not available. Yeah. Even the way we communicate wasn't available. This platform wasn't available 104 years ago. Okay, so when we think about ending coronavirus, right? And we talked earlier about AstraZeneca having that additional vaccine available. What is your opinion on the whole world? Now, keep in mind, right? I'm Miko Pickett, and I live in Marion County in South Carolina, and I am advocating for 70% of Marion County to be vaccinated so that we can go about our business around town, right? So we can hug each other and go back to church and do those things, right? So that's what I'm advocating about. But am I missing the bigger picture? Is the bigger picture the world? What's your opinion on that?
I think we need to look big and we need to look small. We're all focused on our communities. Of course, I mean, you should be, because this is where you live. This is where you can easily act. Getting the vaccines, supporting the vaccines, keeping cases low until we've gotten really good vaccination. That's what you can do in your community. That's what we can all do. And that's great. But yeah, we also do need to be looking worldwide, because we need to be supporting other countries. We need to be make sure we have equitable vaccines distributed to countries that might not be able to afford them as easily, that don't have the same access and manufacturing as we do here. So there's a lot we need to do internationally.
Okay. So talk to us about endcoronavirus.org, because that's an international based organization, right?
Exactly.
So what's your mission? You're a scientist with them. What is your mission? Why do you guys do what you do?
Well, I mean, it seems a little silly to say, but endcoronavirus.org is dedicated to ending coronavirus.
Oh,
Uh, it sounds a little silly, but no, we're a collection of international volunteers from every walk of life, from community members and community organizers to scientists to medical professionals, and we're all volunteering our time and our effort to try and come together to develop things that help keep people safe and stop the spread of coronavirus. And that's anything from, testing in schools to community support to, working on the vaccines and distribution of vaccines. And we're all just trying to help keep people safe.
awesome. Well, Marin County, I'm going to go ahead and break some news here and let you guys know that endcoronavirus.org, they have been in consultation with our nonprofit, making plans to do things like the next time. Because, we had a mass vaccination clinic here in 3 of our cities in our county. And a lot of people who attended, they didn't live in our county, right? Because we don't have, we're a Wi-Fi desert. Over half of us don't even have access to Wi-Fi at all. So it is going to take us like literally hitting the streets and helping people to register, let them know when the clinic is going to be, and maybe even providing transportation. Because we don't have any public transportation. There's no public transportation at all in our county. So I thank you guys. I thank you so much for for the scientists getting involved with the activists on the ground to create an organization that's going to bring awareness and also help the communities. So definitely appreciate that. So guys, what we're doing here is you got maybe 1 minute to get a question in to Dr. Rossman. Dr. Rossman is a virologist. He's with endcoronavirus.org, and he is taking our questions, all of them, even some of the ones, that are out of the box. He's taking all of our questions on coronavirus, COVID-19. And so if you have any questions, now it's the time. Let's go ahead and jump in with that. So let me see if any questions come through. Make sure I didn't miss any. And if I have, y'all, I apologize if I missed some questions. Somebody sent me an inbox the other day, Dr. Rossman, I missed her question. Felt so bad. The technology doesn't always give you the questions. Okay.
No.
So, on one final point that I would love it if you can just kind of help us, help us with from a scientific perspective, and that is, would you, and I know you advocate for the virus, for the vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
Would you, how should we go through this process? Because a lot of us are on the fence, mm-hmm. right? So through this conversation, you've talked to us about the variants and what the variants mean and really what they don't mean, that it's really about staying out the hospital. What are some of the things that we as and our family should be thinking about, right? That will lead us one way or another, whether we get the vaccine or not.
Yeah, that is a great question, and not an easy question either, because we're all looking at the vaccine. We're all trying to protect our health and the health of our family. And so, we're doing that delicate balance of saying what is going to help protect us the best. And so, the ideal situation would be that we don't have a vaccine, but that we also don't have a virus. So we're living in a world right now where there's a real risk of the COVID virus. And so you're looking at the vaccine and, ask questions. Absolutely. Ask the questions, because there are answers out there. We have good data. We have answers. So, you can ask the questions. We're trying to get information out to community groups to be able to then get that information out to community members, to be able to have conversations about the vaccines so that you can get your questions answered, but you can get that information. And, it's that balances. learn about the vaccines, but also learn about the risks of COVID so that you can say, because for me personally, I know that the risks of COVID for me and for my health and for my family's health are far greater than any concerns that I have about the vaccine, because I've looked at the data and the vaccines are really good. They're safe. They work really well. They're not perfect, but they work really well. And the risks of COVID really scare me.
Yes. Yes. Vaccines save lives. Well, on that note, sir, I thank you so much for attending. I thank you so much for being my guest today. I mean, I feel from the pre-conversations that we had and the live, I really feel more aware, more aware to, well, this is an interesting question. And then we were going to wrap up, but somebody wants to get your opinion on something. So guys, I was going to say something, so I'm not going to let you off the hook right now, Dr. Rossman. One more question, okay? Okay. So the question is they want to know your opinion on the body's ability to produce antibodies if you become positive with COVID, right? So some people, I actually have friends who have been positive, including my daughter. My daughter was positive for COVID, and then she got the vaccine after the fact. So what's your opinion on your body's natural ability? Like, can we cure ourselves?
So most people can, because most people, when you get infected with COVID, you do produce antibodies, and those antibodies do work well. It's not everybody, though. Some people only produce a little bit, and they don't work quite so well. Some people produce a lot. Most people do really well. But the good news is, if you've had it, you've probably produced some antibodies. And so then if you go get vaccinated, the vaccine tends to work a little bit better, because it's like you already have a head start. So a lot of these vaccines, you need 2 doses. But if you've already been infected, it's like you've already had maybe 1 or a half a dose already. So it gives you a little bit of a head start.
And okay, thank you so much. And that totally makes sense. And for me, I have been I got my first shot. My second shot is on April 6th, and I have not had coronavirus, COVID-19, even though I have a very risky job. But I have interviewed folks who have had it, who have suffered from it, and I don't even want to go through what they went through to get the antibodies. No way.
Nope. Vaccine is much easier and much more pleasant.
Bam.
Exactly.
Bam, bam. And I did have a sore arm for a couple of days, we'll see. But I'll take that. I will take that, So now I'm going to say goodbye. But I had to get that question in. It was a last minute question. I thought it was a terrific question. And the person who, Michelle says, good answer. So you answered her question. Thank you so much, Dr. Rossman. I'll be in touch very soon.
Well, and thank you so much for all you do, because all the information in the world doesn't do a lot of good if we don't get it out to the people that need it. So thank you for all that you do.
Awesome. You have a blessed one.
Thank you. You too.
All right, y'all. So you heard it, right? I wanted to, the other professor, he was unable to make it. These are very, very busy people. Dr. Rossman, he's a very, very busy person. He squeezed it out of his time to come and talk to us about our questions about COVID-19 and the vaccinations and the history of it. I mean, I feel like in this last hour that I've been with him, that I learned so much, and I'm just here to say that we need 70% of us to be vaccinated in order for all of us to be safe. So Pick 42 Foundation, your city council, your mayor, your elected officials are working very hard to figure out how to bring more accessible clinics to our area. So that is coming soon. And so when these clinics come to our area, we're going to need help. We're going to need help getting people registered, because remember, a lot of people don't have access to the internet. And, it really shouldn't be that. The fact that it's challenging bothers me to get appointments, to tell you the truth. It really does bother me. Okay. So We're going to need your help. The Dr. Rossman is with a group, a nonprofit, in coronavirus.org. They have, I put them on blast, but I've been talking to them, and they've committed to helping us on the ground, committed to helping us figure out how do we get the word out. So there's a lot more to come. There's a lot more to come. But at the end of the day, I don't want to lose any more friends. I don't want to lose any more family. People do not die from the vaccine. People do die from COVID-19. So with that being said, I got a whole lot more to say about some other topics, but I'm gonna have to go offline and say those things. All right. So, but you guys have a very blessed day and a very blessed rest of the week. I'll talk to you all soon.